Hello again, David Willey here with Finn on a bit of a sultry summer's day, and I just want to talk about this coat for a brief moment because I've explained a couple of times before, if you've been watching any of the videos I've been doing, I used to collect things over time, and now I've got to the point where I need to sort some of this stuff out, get rid of it, etc. And I just thought, because this coat's just about to disappear off, and I thought I'd tell you one of the small stories, which I'm sure, again, many of you out there have got similar stories as well. But back when I was a youngster, my dad suddenly had the good life type urge and bought a shop and did basically just ran the news agents. And for me, growing up, it was great because you met so many different people, different backgrounds, people coming into the shop over time. And back then, back in the 70s, it was, of course, every other bloke that came in of a certain age was a veteran. So they'd be telling you stories. They knew I got a bit of interest. They'd bring me in things, etc. So, and some of those stories, again, and some of the material that came in that way, I'll talk about on other videos. But this is where I do feel slightly awkward and embarrassed, because I can't remember who it was, but someone discovered this coat in their attic. I'm not sure about the story behind it, but they ended up knowing that I was interested in this stuff, and it was handed over to me. And sad to say that, again, this was one of those items that ended up in my attic back in Eastbourne and subsequently came down here to Dorset. And it suffered over time, like so many of these woolen coats, etc. It's got a bit of moth in and a bit of frass from whatever horrible insects were living in it at one point, but still pretty complete and not too bad an order. So why are we interested in just another great coat from the Second World War? Well, first point for me was, at some point, this coat definitely belonged to someone from the Polish 1st Armoured Division. It's got that lovely winged eagle, or winged helmet, I should say, on the side. The Polish soldiers called that the squirrel at one point, but it was in August of 42. It's designed by Gap. I'll just check his name for you, but Adam Bunch, Bunsch, who was part of the 10th Armoured Cavalry Brigade over here, because of course the Poles, they'd gone, those had managed to escape, some went to France, they fought in France in 1940 for a while, those that managed to escape to the UK. Some of them then form what becomes, again in 1942, the Polish 1st Armoured Division. And that unit, February 42, when they're formed up in Scotland, then later sees action in August, after the D-Day landings, of fighting in Normandy, the closing of the Falaise Gap, fights with the 1st Canadian Division all the way up through in the liberation of Europe. And under the General Malchek, who's the guy that's in charge of it. And obviously, for Poland, it was hugely important. They got soldiers fighting in Italy, and of course, some soldiers fighting on the Russian front as well. Sorry, dog. But the design of the winged eagle goes back to their Hussar background. But that sense that they were identifying themselves, and there's another way that they were identifying themselves, and this coat shows it, because it's not just with I think he was a sergeant, from the markings, the orange and the black on the collar. That's because of that were the colours of the Polish 1st Armoured Division. The symbol there, I think there was probably something else marked on their Poland, but that's not there. There's a couple of threads left, so it might have been on there at one point. But there's another thing here. The Poles were notoriously smart, and you'll read all these accounts wherever they ended up being based, went around. They were a very, very smart military. So everything ended up, if you look at the photographs of them, etc., there's a certain dash, a certain elan, a certain something, the way they wear their uniforms. And again, if you go back to, without going on about it too much, reading all the accounts in the Second World War, we've met a couple of ladies. I remember talking to someone, and that idea of what the Polish gentleman, how he treated all the young ladies over here in the UK, went down very, very well. And, good looking chaps, etc. So this coat reveals that in another way because it's been tailored. It's been cut in at the back. You can see how the, whether it's a unit tailor, whether it would be the local tailor they go to and ask for these things to make it look that much crisper, to form that sort of, to give it a waist, etc., rather than just that classic sort of, lovely, keeps you nice and warm, etc., practical greatcoat. But actually, can this add something of a bit of dash to it as well? Now, as I say, this sat in my attic for an awful long time. I dug it out and I was really privileged to go and give a talk at the Museum of the Second World War in Gdansk about a year ago. And one of the things there, I'd already found some stuff I'd sent to Warsaw Military Museum over there some years ago because my grandmother had served in the Red Cross at a number of RAF and US Air Force, Army Air Force bases in around Bedford Way. And she got some Polish airmen had thanked her and had studio portraits taken, and they were kind of done like slightly jazzed up postcards and handed over to people, signed and that, to my grandmother. So those ones I sent out to, I think it was the Military Museum in Warsaw at the time. This one, the newer Museum of the Second World War in Gdansk, I mean, you have the chance to go there, do go and have a look. It's really always interesting as well, looking at a conflict from another country's viewpoint. And of course, Poland, it suffered grievously, not just because of the Nazi invasion in World War II, but then that period of communist domination by the Soviet Union after World War II. So much of its history was almost deliberately suppressed or in some cases destroyed of its own individual efforts in the war, etc. And so they're building up again their own collections, their own stories about these things. And I just happened to email them and said, listen, I've got this thing, you guys interested? And it just so happens some of them I'm going to be meeting tomorrow, so I've got a chance to hand it over. And I was nearly want to use that word, here it is going home. It never went home, if you see what I mean in that way. This was made in Britain, British issue greatcoat to the Poles fighting for their own liberation. So in one sense, it's not really going home, but it's going back to a home that I think is very worthy. Absolutely, if they've got an interest in this. And I just mention it to you because, again, some of us as collectors and everything, what's the best place for those items to go? Sometimes I know it's probably bits of your pension fund and everything else, if I flog these on. But where are those items that deserve the right home sort of thing? And I was a bit surprised because they said, oh, yes, absolutely. Because so much stuff, of course, now we're getting further and further away from the Second World War. Lots of material has been played with, luckily this is one I didn't go out walking the dog in so much, and everything, or things have altered. So finding some material that's still in fairly original condition from the Second World War has got interest. And that's why the offers there. Do not be offended if someone comes back and says, thanks, we've got a cupboard full of greatcoats, or we're not interested in that. But that doesn't stop you from asking if you've got material, because it might surprise you what somewhere along the line a museum might turn around and say, yes, actually, thank you very much. We could really do with one of those. We haven't had one of those in the collection, or we had one and it's in terrible order, or etc. We'd love another one in reserve or something. So this coat's one that makes me feel good because I feel like it is getting to a proper home. What have you done with that ball, dog? What are you doing? Have you lost it somewhere? I've lost it somewhere. Where's the ball? Oh, you've got it, have you? Right. So I feel pleased about it, that it's going to a proper home, and it was worth my while. And whoever it was all those years ago who passed it on to me, I feel like I'm doing them the service that perhaps I didn't do when I was a youngster, where they just passed it on, and it ended up in my attic that way. So hopefully they'll be appreciative of it. And whoever the guy, unfortunately, there's not a name in it, whoever the guy that did his service, in the Second World War in Polish 1st Armoured Division, thank you so much. And your little bit of history is going to be hopefully collected, picked up and looked after now back in Poland. So thank you.